All right. So, on a dare, I think it was. Um, Darren said something about having never had a class about kisses of the Bible. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. And I spent a little bit of time looking. I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that. Oh, yeah. No, I think it's actually going to be really interesting. I have given you guys outlines of the 7 weeks. It's a 7 week thing because we'll be leaving on the 8th week for vacation, and so let's just shoehorn this into 7 weeks. I don't think we could belabor this too long, but you never know. We may run down some rabbit holes and go some interesting places. But I think 7 weeks, do what we should be able to get this done. Couple things. We talked last time, if you remember, when I taught John. You'll always get sort of a feeling for my thoughts about the day based on the size of the coffee cup. It's a big coffee cup this morning, so that's always there. Then, secondly, you guys are guinea pigs in this class. You didn't know it, but that's life. I took a class recently, a continuing education class from a pretty cool university and all, and learned a lot about AI and its applications to things. And I've been working my head thinking about probably starting, maybe if we could come up with a way to start a yearly seminar about AI in the church, because there's a lot of confusion about it, what it's good, what it's not good for, and all kinds of things. But a lot of this class material was done with the help of AI. Obviously proofread by humans and looked over and things, but there's a lot of capabilities there. And we, by the end of the class, I hope to be able to show you some cool things that, it's like where the brotherhood could go, where lots of people are going. Maybe we can catch up with them a little bit. So let's tear into it. We'll be in Genesis today. The outline says that. If you want to, just open your Bibles up around there. We won't leave Genesis. We need to undo some thinking. All right. When we think of kisses nowadays, especially in the world that is, the United States of America and modern culture and everything, what do we think about? What comes to our mind? What is a kiss nowadays? There you go. Right? What's romance? Romantic kisses, right? If you look, Yep. Kiss of death. Okay, there you go. We'll sort of be covering that this morning, actually. Something similar to that, but no. Yeah, kiss of death. It's really not what we find in the first century. In the ancient Near East, right? Kisses were, there was the romantic aspect to it. If you look at the outline, I'm actually avoiding Song of Solomon and one of the Proverbs, right? We're not going there directly. Sorry, but we have plenty of other stuff to talk about. So when we hear the word kiss in modern English, it's usually romance, right? That's what affection between partners, maybe a parent kissing a child goodnight, right? But it's dominated by this romantic vision. Now, we're going to be studying this morning an arc of one family. All right, we're going to be talking about Jacob. All right, and Joseph. Right, we're going to follow this arc. All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is Jacob's kiss at the well of Rachel. Okay. So in Genesis 29:11, we find that Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. All right. So if you're looking at a movie, and the scene comes up and you see this, right? There's some music and they cut away, right? It's probably presented, it would be interesting just to see how that was presented. But let's actually think about what's going on there in Jacob's life and what he's just been through and what the kiss is actually doing, all right? So by the time Jacob reaches Rachel, right, what's been going on in his life, right? He has lost almost everything. What did he do to Esau? He stole his brother's birthright, right, for a bowl of stew, okay? Then, with his mother's help, which I think is really interesting, right, he stole his father's blessing from Esau, right? So, sordid past there. And what was going on then? Esau is out to kill him, right? Esau is like, I'm going to do this guy in, because he's stolen everything of mine and important things. And so he heads to, his mom says, you got to get out of here, right? So she sends him away north over the Euphrates to Haran, that's southeastern Turkey, all right, to her brother Laban, who's an uncle. I mean, Jacob's never met this person, right? It's like, I travel, and my mom, bless her heart, will be like, hey, you're going to somewhere, Northern California. You need to go check in with the cousins. I'm like, I don't even know who these people are, right? I've got no clue who this extended family is that lives, 2,500 miles away. Well, that's the situation that Jacob was headed into, okay? I mean, really an unknown thing. And no, I've never checked in with the cousins in Northern California. I have not done that. So he's traveling. In Genesis, we don't hear much actually about the story of the journey itself, right? We get a few lines about a dream at Bethel and the ladder, but that's about it. We don't know a lot there. And then we get to the well, right? 500 miles later. Can you imagine? I mean, that's like further from here to D.C., right? It's here to D.C. and back, this huge trip. Jerry Anderson could probably tell us about it, right? With his hiking on the trail and everything. And he's done this all on foot. Maybe the occasional camel or something I would expect, right? But he went away. He went to the far land. And there, let's get over here to... He's going to meet Rachel, right? So in Genesis 29, right? Jacob went on his journey, came to the land of his people. He looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, put the stone back in place. And Jacob said to them, my brethren, where are you from? Now I think that's interesting, right? And we're going to see this again. The Hebrew familiar words and all are pretty widely stretched, right? I mean, why would he call him brethren? I mean, he's not, how would he know? It's sort of like we call each other brothers and things. It's a more generic kind of term lots of times, right? So Jacob said to them, my brethren, where are you from? And they said, we're from Haran. Then he said to them, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said to him, we know him. And so he said to them, is he well? And they said, he is well. And look, his daughter Rachel's coming with the sheep. Then he said, look, it is still high day. It's not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them. And then we go on down, 9. Now, while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled a stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. We'll get to that in just a second. Puts the kiss in sort of a totally different mindset, right? What's going on? What's going on with the kiss? Joy. What came first in this meeting? The kiss came first, right? He was like, he kissed her, he ran up, kissed her, told her who she was, and wept. Told her who he was and wept. Does that make sense today? Do we do that? Yep. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm assuming it wasn't. Yeah. So,
I think you have to look at it in context. So we're 13, it's a family reunion essentially, or family identity. And the father does the same thing.
right. So there you go. Yeah, we stopped right before that. So Blaine's jumping ahead to. No, it's good. It's good. I'm glad. That means I don't have to jump ahead to it. So if we keep on going, right past, so she ran and told her father. And it came to pass when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Right?
At that point, he already knew the relatives.
Yeah.
Rachel had no clue.
She didn't. Yeah. In this day and age, I can imagine a slap would have been involved.
So is it like Hebrew to Hebrew? Did they know, hey, this is the Hebrew? So you greet your national, your community people? I see it. You know, they say kiss all those other guys.
No, I don't actually. So it's supposed to be, it's discussion about this, right? But the point that, that we're starting with here is that kisses back then in the Near East were a familiar greeting, all right? Even if it was unknown, right? And the other thing, right? The thing that's emotional, and I'm not a huge scholar of the Old Testament, trust me. But for this particular class, right, this arc of Jacob and what he goes through in his life is really fascinating, right? And so when you read this and you actually not just study the scriptures, but what I just tried to read, right? I mean, think about what he had done, where, his past travels. I mean, he did not have it easy. How many months would it have taken, right? I mean, it's pretty dedicated purpose, really, not to get, waylaid along the path and everything. And he just had to have been carrying this huge emotional burden. He gets there and he finally finds family. And, I don't think he was too worried about the potential for a slap in my mind, right? This was the greeting. There wasn't, there's nothing else to it.
Is it kind of like our handshake today?
Yeah, and we'll get to that, right? Actually, the last study of the 7 weeks is about the holy kiss, and there's a lot there. But yes, yeah, somewhat like our handshake. Now, any of us, lots of us, right? You see it on TV and all, but it's for real, right? Europe, there's still places where they do the kisses on the cheeks, and that's actually not between strangers so much. It is more of a family kind of thing, right? It's close people who do that kind of thing. So that's that was the beginning. In the bookends of things, right? That's the start of this we're looking at today. Over in Genesis 48, we're going to see a different kind of kiss, a kiss across generations, right, if you will. And as we get there, though, we're going to, teacher's prerogative, we're going to take a sidetrack onto something else, which, it's one of these trivial pursuit kind of conversations that I want us to have. So now, Jacob, and this is the piece I want to cover. What's he now called? Okay, so this is, if you wanted to go there, we're in Genesis 48. All right, chapter 10 or verse 10 is actually where we're going to be. Let me get over there. Also, for the next class, I'll have my iPad back for this stuff. So there's going to be a blessing in this period of time. Fathers, patriarchs handed down blessings and authority and covenant belonging, right, to the next generation, or they skip generations, whatever, right? So, that was a common practice, and we're about to see that, and the kiss plays a part of that. But on the way to this point, what happened to Jacob? Who is he now? I mean, the text keeps calling him Jacob, but Israel. How did that happen? How did he get renamed Israel? He had a fight with God. Absolutely. I want us to talk about the fight with God for a second. What does Israel mean? Do we know what it is? I think it says what it was in the Bible. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Right? So remember the scene. He wrestles with this guy, this man, all night. He won't let go, right? He's like, the person the person he's wrestling with is like, let me go. And he's like, no, I will not let you go until you give me a blessing. And, his hip gets thrown out of joint and all this. He finally gets a blessing and he lets go. So in that context, right, what does the word prevail mean there? Did he beat God? Do what? I'm sorry.
He seemed to have beat the opposite of God about this man. You don't beat God.
Right. Yeah.
He didn't lose.
Hmm?
I don't know why I said that he didn't beat him, but he didn't necessarily lose.
Right.
Watch wrestling, after wrestling matches, you don't have to win the match. You can lose the match.
Right. So,
If he lost the match, it was God winning.
yeah. Okay. So, I think he prevailed, right? To everyone's sort of saying this because he didn't let go of God, right? I think there's a lot here for us. Right? We read this about this thing in the Old Testament, and Jacob gets renamed Israel. But I think we could do this for a whole week or two. We're not going to. But we wrestle, right? But we wrestle not because God is against us, right? We wrestle and we prevail because during our wrestling, during our lives, we don't let go of God, right? The struggles that we face are real. But we win, we prevail when we hold on to God in those struggles, right? So Jacob didn't let go during this wrestle, right? I think this is really key, all right? Because he didn't let go, he did get his blessing. We get our blessing if we stay with God throughout our lives, right? But he also got wounded, right? His hip got out of joint, I think is what it says, right? So does that work today? Think about it. Because we hold on to God in our daily lives, do we end up wounded? Sometimes it's...
Paul said that God's grace he was told that God's grace was sufficient.
Right.
Because of his, whatever it was.
Thorn in the side, yeah, we don't know what it was, right? But
Yeah.
so I'm thinking along the lines of, sometimes in our lives, wouldn't it be easier to not be a Christian? Frankly? Yeah.
This society routinely ridicules Christians. It's the only religion that you can do that to.
Yeah.
They're not doing it.
But I think when I was reading it, the thing that I really wanted to bring out this morning is, right, so in our Christian walk, we prevail with God, not really against God, right? We prevail by holding on to God throughout our lives. We do end up wounded because there are plenty of times when it would be much easier to not be a Christian, right? Even sometimes in just day-to-day life, right? There are things that might be fun that we could do, right, if we weren't Christians or whatever. Just things, right? It's the Christian life isn't necessarily the easy life everybody thinks it is, or what people portray sometimes. It's a real struggle at times, and we do ourselves an injustice if we don't acknowledge that. But we cling to faith even when it hurts. That's what Jacob did, right? And when we come through the other side of it, our identity is changed. Just like Jacob. Jacob was given a new name, right? A lifetime of struggling, prevailing with God, right? Um, do we change? Hopefully. Do these things get easier? Yeah. Yeah, they do. It does get easier the older you get, right? The more experience you have with things and start being able to put stuff in perspective. So yeah, so an Old Testament, an Old Testament scene that happened to our main character here. I just wanted us to bring it out and think about for a minute, right? Because I know in the past, lots of times when I read things like that, I'm just reading the verses. I'm not applying it. Yes, sir.
So you're talking about how the Christian life is hard. One of the reasons for that is if I make a mistake that hurts another person, if I wasn't a Christian, so
Wouldn't care.
so I hurt a big deal. But as a Christian, I'm like, I just, especially the person not a Christian, I just gave God that thing if he knows I'm a Christian. Or we find out. I don't like that. That hurts a lot. It's not easy to be a Christian.
Right.
I wouldn't have cared if I hurt that person I didn't know. If I wasn't a Christian. That's what I am.
Yeah.
I'm worried about God's
And fighting with it here this morning. Yeah, so good. Yeah, I got that right. Being a Christian is different than not being a Christian, right? We think about things differently. We have different priorities. But yeah, so at any rate, like I said, I thought it was really interesting. Usually when I read these things, I'm just looking at the verses and not necessarily paying attention to the story, and I'm not making applications and things, especially in the Old Testament. I'm really bad about that. So yeah, it was cool. I'm glad we could bring it forward into today and just talk about it for a second, because that's, yeah.
Also, as Israel needs wrestling with God,
Yep.
wrestling with Christ, we as new Israelites wrestle with Scripture. Like, it's not easy to understand, and there are times where you're like, well, why can't this be easy? Why can't things be right, Bob? But trying to be a Christian isn't easy. We have to wrestle with that, and once you come out of that, my cup will be bloody, but you come out as a stronger Christian now.
Yep. Absolutely. I hadn't thought about that. Wrestling with Scripture, wrestling with God. Yeah. Okay, so back to the kisses. So the second kiss we're going to look at is at the other end of Jacob's life. All right. So the Jacob who fell on Rachel's neck weeping, right? He was a young man on the run, had found his people, a long way away from where he started and all. Decades later, right? That same Jacob's in Egypt. He's lived through an awful lot in his life, right? A wedding night deception that gave him Leah before Rachel. Okay. He's worked 14 years for Laban, 12 sons and a daughter. He was reconciled to his brother. Okay. That's part of what was going on, right? With this wrestling with God. That was a trip back because Laban was going after him, right? Remember, he thought he'd been stealing and doing all this stuff, right? So Laban was chasing him. We had the wrestling with God. He was headed back to Esau at that point, right? And they were reunited. Rachel, had died in childbirth. That would be an awful kind of thing to have to deal with. And he thought he'd lost Joseph, right? Remember all that. He thought Joseph was gone. And, for 20 some years. And then he's reunited, right? So he has had an interesting, rich life, right? This is a guy who, sits there, and I'm sure he has an awful lot to look back on and think about, right? So he's on his deathbed. Let me get to the right scriptures here. I could see that, right? Yeah. God's like intervening in a way, saying,
That's my favorite. Rest of them is struggling with this.
yeah, so who was going, yeah. So it's interesting, yeah, so he prevailed. Hmm. I think God prevailed. I mean, prevailing is a,
Well,
yeah,
he prevailed, but I mean, he prevailed by getting his attention.
right.
You know.
Yep.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's good. There's a lot there. There's a, just a few little passages, and there's a lot to be thinking about. So at any rate, so let's see here. Where are we? We are in Genesis 48. Joseph, right, is told that indeed your father's sick, and so there's a lot of things going on here to set the scene. So we're going to, let's see. Okay, so Joseph said to his father, right, we're down here. Okay, so Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, who are these? Now, this is the scene, right, is sort of, one of those old, if it was a movie, I picture it's probably in a stone room, castle kind of thing, lots of dim lights, the old wizened king, with robes on and stuff. And, blind. I'm thinking something out of the Lord of the Rings or something, right? I mean, it's one of these. But so we're here. So when Israel saw Joseph's sons, right? So Joseph is bringing his sons for a blessing, right? This is that covenantal passing of the sword, if you will, right? You're going to bring the, it's patriarchal. Well, yeah, we're going to bring them into the covenant, the promises, right, that have been made for the lineages and all. We're going to bring them into that. We're going to give them some real authority and like lands and things and all, right? So, well, I guess now we do with a will or something, right? Something similar. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, who are these? And Joseph said to his father, they're my sons whom God has given me in this place. And he said, please bring them to me and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near him and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I have not thought to see your face, but in fact, God has also shown me your offspring. So this is sort of like the general. If we get past this, we get into the details of actually how it all happened in the hands and who went before the other person and all. We didn't read it. We just assumed that it happened. But how was Esau's birthright stolen? Not birthright, the blessing. What was going on with Isaac back 500 miles ago, decades ago? What do we remember that scene? What was happening? The exact same kind of thing, right? Jacob, with his mom's help, fooled his dad. Dad, what? His father couldn't see, was blind, right? Only had smell and touch. And what they do? Esau was a hairy person. Jacob wasn't, right? So they put sheepskins on the back of his hands, and basically fooled the dad by going in. And what was going on? The exact same thing. A kiss, right? A blessing. Passing of the covenant, right? So it's sort of interesting. Here we go, decades later, all this lifetime spent. And you got to wonder, was he thinking about the deception that he pulled so many years before, right? Because it's exactly the same thing, right? His eyes were dim with age so that he could not see. So he's taking it on faith, right, that who he's blessing is correct, right? Just like what he did to his brother decades ago. It had to be going through his mind. But it's the same thing, okay? So it's a kiss. It's a different kind of kiss, right? In this case, not that relief kiss. This is a kiss of passing authority, if you will, right? Um,
Well, this I'm thinking of, this is him and his grandsons. You know, the majority of us in here are grandparents.
Yep.
You know, and we think, I mean, it'll take a long time yet before I pass, my grandchildren are still young, but that we don't let lessons on like they did, obviously. But we want to show that love and, goodness for our grandchildren, and, you know, we can give our grandchildren resonate, because I do. I'm assuming the other grandparents do as well. And so I think of it from that as well. It's not weird for grandfathers to kiss their grandchildren.
Yeah.
When they're getting ready to pass. It's weird for me.
that's true. And yeah, sure, that would be, that's absolutely correct. But this is, you know, there's more here than just that, right? It's a patriarchal blessing, right? And I guess I can see that. We do things like that with our grandchildren, but I don't really think it's not the same level of this blessing is like, you know,
Like you said earlier, we have a little now, we'll take care of that aspect.
yeah, that's probably more along the lines of what this is like, right? Although it's almost maybe even like, you know, passing on of if you were back in the day in a country where there was hereditary kingship, right, where the royalty was a hereditary line, and at some point, you know, that's transferred, you know, that authority over the kingdom kind of thing, right? It's that kind of, it's almost a ceremony that you're going through here, not hey, it's great to see you, have a great life or whatever kind of thing. This is like almost formal, very solemn is the way I picture this. All right.
I think there's
Yep.
legitimacy to that too, because he was lifting up Ephraim and Manasseh from being grandkids to being children. He changed their status.
Right. Yeah.
He
That's true.
said, these are now my children. He was going from 12 tribes to 13 tribes.
And it's important because these children were Egyptian, right? I mean, their mom was Egyptian, right? They
Yes.
weren't part of that covenant thing, right? So he is changing their status. Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. So it was quite the thing. All right. So if we just skip, because we're running out of time, a little bit further over to Genesis 49, we'll get to the last kiss in this whole in the whole thing. Okay, so and this is one of those other things that again, I think nowadays we see this sometimes with people are comfortable with their life and they're really comfortable with the arc of their life and they get to the end and they feel satisfied with the way things are, right? This just gets me, right? Jacob's death and burial. So in 29, he says, then he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that's in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that's in the field of, and names I can't read, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron, bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite as a possession for a burial place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is there were purchased from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Think about that. You know, that is really, I mean, he was put together in his head doing this thing, right? I mean, he's like, I've lived a life. This is my life. It's a good life. I'm happy with it. Here's the things I want you to do. And, I just, nowadays we see so many people clinging on for that last minute of life, if you will, right? They put themselves through so much just to get another week or two. And I think this here is like, Jacob, was happy in the end, right? He had sort of come this full circle, had lived this amazing life, very rich with all kinds of things. And he was okay. He was okay with what was coming, right? But then here in 50, verse 1, then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Who was that kiss for? Joseph, right? It was a kiss of sorrow, a kiss of release. It's like that. And one of those things you sort of have to do. Do we do that nowadays? I see some people shaking their heads. I don't. But yeah, so it's like the whole. We're at the end of the other end of the life there. This arc that we've looked at, 3 kisses, and this one is, this emotional kiss of the next generation releasing the past generation, right? Think it's interesting, right? I think we don't do that as much. You see it on TV, right? I mean, there's some cultures obviously that still do an awful lot of kissing after death, right? I mean, wailing, all kinds of things, right? I mean, very emotional, right? There are other cultures that seem to still have a lot of emotion around death. We tend to, I don't think, have quite so much, right? I mean, I've been to plenty of funerals and things and all, and they're very somber, reserved affairs for the most part. So yeah, I think maybe some of that has left, at least for us.
I think it has a lot to do with the circumstances. I know my father passed away, I was Paul, and it was on a Wednesday night, and he actually passed away this congregation in church. But I was only able to get there right after his death. I remember this story. So I think it was all circumstances.
Yep, I believe that. The circumstances, the relationship that you're losing, all kinds of things, right?
Maybe because also on distance, physically you've been from them. I mean, really have to be that to see them and things as well. They've seen them for a while, like seeing the difference, you've been with them all for the last couple days. There's a lot of circumstances.
All right, so these kisses were actually easy, if you think about it, but they're setting the base. Okay, we've bookended a family arc, right? So, but we've set a base, right? We've set a sort of expectation that kisses are carrying more weight than what we tend to assign them in our day and age, right? I mean, the Hollywood kiss, right? There's not so much there necessarily, right? But throughout the Bible, we're going to go through the Old Testament, New Testaments, right? Kisses have a lot of meaning in them. There's a lot usually around them. If you look at the outline, you're going to see the topics, right, that we're going to be covering. Some of the kisses are going to get pretty hard to think about, in a way, right? The one that everyone will want to come to real quick is, Judas, right? That's something to think about. The one that will probably be interesting in a way is when we get to the very last week and we are talking about the holy kiss, right? There's a lot of thoughts about that nowadays. Well, that'll be interesting. The one that I'm looking forward to, I think we get to it next week already, is the prodigal son. There's a lot there, right? So if you look at what I handed out this morning, next week we'll actually get, so there are these terms, word definitions, which I frankly don't care about any of them except for 2. The Greek terms, the first 2 under Greek terms, to love, to kiss, and to kiss fervently and kiss repeatedly. That will come up next week. And it's worth, we won't tear into the Greek too hard, but we can talk about it in English, but just the difference in that, right? It means something. So that's it. Thank you for being guinea pigs. It will get better as we go on, as I have figured out how to use the material a bit better. And yeah, we look forward to next week.